now joined by the Director of the Defense Media Operations, Major General Edward Buba. Thank you so much for being on Newsnight.
Thank you for inviting me.
You've had quite the day. The Nigerian military has been described as overstretched, dealing with multiple security challenges. But may we join Nigerians tonight to acknowledge and thank the men and women of the Nigerian military for their service and sacrifice.
Thank you.
But how confident are you that you can tackle all of the security challenges on multiple fronts without compromising other fronts? For instance, the Lakurawa is the latest challenge you're facing at the moment.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And what I would like to start by saying is that the prerequisite of the military is to find and destroy the terrorists wherever they exist within the shores of this country. And it is for that reason that we are conducting counterinsurgency and counter-terrorist operations. And as I speak, we're in various theaters of operation in the country. We have a theater in the northeast, we have in the northwest, we have in the north central, we have in the southeast, we have in the Niger Delta region. And in all these theaters, troops are fighting simultaneously. We're not just fighting simultaneously, we're also fighting in different dimensions. We're fighting on the land, in the air, and on the waters, and we're also fighting in the cyberspace, because you know there's a lot of things going on also in the social media, some of which, and most of which, we have fake news and disinformation and all sorts of that kind. Now, who are we fighting? We are fighting an enemy who is described or adopts different forms in the different theaters. Now, in the northeast, we have Boko Haram, ISWAP. If you go to the northwest, some people choose to tell you that these are bandits. And if you go to the north central, some people choose to tell you these are headers and whatever. But what do? They carry out acts of terror. Since they carry out acts of terror, for us, the enemy is the terrorist. Okay? So we're not going to be constrained by those languages. I think sometimes those languages are political, but we are not politicians, we are military men, and that is it. Now, in fighting these terrorists across the country, we go after their center of gravity. And in going after their center of gravity, we're taking out their leaders, we're taking out their commanders, we're taking out their operatives, we're taking out their combatants, and then we're dismantling their military capabilities, their logistic capabilities, as well as their administrative capabilities. This we have been doing and continue to do.
All right, Major General, I want to be more specific, and I like that you brought in the cyberspace, social media. This group is using that sort of strategy, reportedly, social media, sermons, sort of welfare programs to recruit young men. And people have said these tactics sort of are innovative. How is the military handling this type of strategies? And secondly, you've emphasized community vigilance, how important that is in combating these threats. Yet, some locals claim that they face reprisals, both from terrorists and from authorities, when they report some sort of suspicious activities. How is this being handled as well?
Okay.
Just to build that trust.
Okay. I will say that the operational theaters in which our troops are engaged in, these theaters are tensed, they are challenging, and they are lethal. And I will add that the operational theaters are also complex. Okay? Now, complex in the sense that, I will say this now, that when you compromise on security, you compromise everybody's security. And this is the situation we are faced with. We know that we have collaborators, we have informants, you know, and when you look at terrorism, insurgency, the lifeline of terrorism and insurgency is the people. Winning the war without the support of the people is close to impossible. So the question is, what is our gross domestic attitude towards this war in this country? And that question, I beg Nigerians to help us to answer it. You know, as much as the government has a responsibility towards the people also have a responsibility towards the government, you know.
Yeah. Greatly. I know we've been speaking generally, but I want to speak specifically about the Lakurawa group because that's what we've been told it's a new group by the Nigerian military. However, evidence abound that this group has been in Nigeria since 2018. That's, my maths may be rough, but that's like 6 years now. Yeah. Was this a failure of intelligence, or was this just a strategic negligence on the part of the Nigerian military? Because even a Google search can show you that Lakurawa has had run-ins with formations, police attacks in Tangaza, local government area of Sokoto State. So what really happened with Lakurawa, and why are we designating them as terrorist group now in 2024?
Thank you very much for that question. Very excellent question. And I will say that when we're talking about the Lakurawa group that was recently announced, we must understand that there is a process and procedure for the categorization and classification of a threat. You said 6 years ago. Okay, fine. Were they considered the kind of threat that they constitute today as at that time? You know, and I said this when I made the pronouncement. I said these people came and they were embraced. So they had enough time.
That they were invited.
Oh, good. You see, they were even invited. So now you compromise on security. You do what? You compromise everybody's security.
But isn't that a failure of our local policing system?
It goes back to saying, to what I say, that the people are the lifeline of terrorism. Winning the war without the support of the people is close to impossible. So there's the process for classification and categorization. But let's leave all that one, because I've seen a lot on TV. You know, we are very good scholars in Nigeria. Everybody can talk big grammar. Now, let's forget the history. Let's forget the origin. Let's forget their purpose. All that right now is inconsequential. What is important now is they're a threat to our national security, and we're going to treat them as such.
I mean, I don't know if we can forget the origin or even their purpose, because when you have people being welcome in the community, that means there's sort of a gap there, allowing the community to accept these type of people. But let's talk about sort of insecurity in the Sahel being exacerbated by recent coups that we've seen. What sort of strategies, or how is the military trying to revive regional security cooperation and address broader challenges that's posing sort of ungoverned spaces in our neighboring Nigeria?
Very good question once again. You know, in the Northeast, we have the Multinational Joint Task Force. And before I go into that, you know, terrorism is a global phenomenon. It's not something that just one country alone can handle. You need cooperation, that regional cooperation, to tackle it. And we've had a very successful outcome so far with our Multinational Joint Task Force. Now, with the threat that we were beginning to experience from the Sahel, something similar was being put in place. I think they call it the Sahel 5 or something like that. And then what happened? Those three out of the 5 pulled out. It's a problem. It's a problem, okay? And when we look at the terrorists, where is their destination? Most of them, their destination, I would say, is Nigeria, because they believe Nigeria is a very rich country and so on. So for us, we're doing the much we can to make sure that we close those gaps, we repair the relationship, and that informed the Chief of Defense Staff visit to Niger. And once again, we're having that joint border patrols with Niger, and we're hoping to extend it to the other ones to save our country.
Very quickly before we let you go, how do you hope to enhance all of this that you're doing so far? You're saying you're doing the best you can so far, and again, we thank you for that. Yeah. But how do we improve on this to ensure that, you know, Nigerians are truly, truly safe?
Okay, I will say that we are on a high state of alert. That is one. And we have increased our state of readiness. And this is evident from the recent visit of the Minister of Defense to the Northwest, where he operationalized the air component of Operation Fansanyama. We have rejigged our operations around the northwest in order to contain and destroy any threats against our country. And then we are working assiduously to create conditions whereby these terrorists cannot carry out acts of terror against our citizens.
I'm not sure what my producer is actually saying, but perhaps I can quickly throw this in. Groups like La Courawa and those who are exploiting the ungoverned spaces from the crisis we're seeing in the Sahel and all of that, they usually rely heavily on funding and logistical support.
Yeah.
Are you any step closer to dismantling that? Can you tell us tonight, can you assure Nigerians that you're able to trace, track, and stop the monies and fundings?
What I can tell you is that the armed forces is working together with other stakeholders in a whole of government, approach, collaborating with the populace and civil societies towards implementing a comprehensive and a multifaceted approach in resolving the terrorist issues that we face in the country.
All right. Thank you so much, Major General Edward Buba, who is the Director, Defense Media Operations, for joining us tonight. We thank you and we thank all the men in uniform who put their lives down for Nigerians.